Two massive explosions have rocked the East African capitals of Tanzania and Kenya in attacks against US embassies. Yesterday, the fundamentalist Islamic Jihad warned it was preparing an anti-US strike, but no one has yet claimed responsibility for the bombs. In Kenya, police say a huge car bomb was probably the cause of this morning's blast. The International Red Cross says 40 people have been killed, but local police say there could be 80 victims with 1,000 injured, most of them serious. The bomb exploded at around 10:30 local time, totally destroying a Fundi house, the Kenyan Trade Ministry. The 25-story cooperative house lost all its windows, as did all buildings in a 300-meter radius. Next door, the American embassy was extensively damaged and the ambassador's been taken to hospital with facial injuries. There are fatalities and injured among the embassy staff. American medical and engineering teams are being flown in to help with the rescue operation. Minutes after the explosion, the city centre buildings spilled crowds of panic-stricken victims into the streets. Passing cars were commandeered to take the wounded to hospital. Those slightly injured left pools of blood in the streets for hundreds of metres around. There are unconfirmed reports that Marine embassy guards were involved in a shootout with gunmen at the time of the explosion. Those unhurt joined in the rescue operations, pulling the survivors out of the rubble with their bare hands. The US Embassy's bomb-proof doors, ripped off in the blast, were pressed into service as stretchers, and the Kenyans have appealed for medical supplies and heavy lifting equipment. Emergency services appear to be almost overwhelmed by the scale of the damage, with Nairobi's centre resembling a war zone. In Washington, President Clinton was woken from his sleep at 5:30 to be briefed. The American State Department has said the attacks were coordinated, and Secretary of State Madeleine Albright is flying back early from a private visit to Italy. Kenyan police have arrested one man, but no details have been released as yet. Faced with these scenes of devastation, the Kenyan authorities have warned that they fear the final casualty figures could go much higher.
The scene in the Tanzanian city Dar es Salaam. There was a second massive explosion this morning, minutes after the blast in Kenya. Cars were set on fire and at least 5 people were killed. Fire engines and ambulances quickly moved in. Eyewitnesses say the damage was serious. More than 50 people were injured. Police say the blast happened near the US Embassy on the outskirts of Dar es Salaam at a busy time of the day. One wing of the building was completely ripped off. Embassy staff are among the wounded. The explosion happened with little warning. Chaos set in as local residents were sent fleeing. It's feared there may be many people trapped in the wreckage. The French embassy also suffered considerable damage. It's thought it was a car bomb, but there's been no confirmation yet. A large petrol tanker was seen in the area shortly before the explosion. Police have sealed off the US compound, and bomb disposal experts are checking all vehicles in the city centre. The authorities have made an appeal for blood donors to come forward. It's not known who was responsible.
October the 23rd, 1983, a lorry packed with explosives was driven into the US Marine base in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. 241 died. The slaughter and the horrific scenes relayed to Americans back home was enough for President Ronald Reagan, who called the troops home. The following year, a suicide bomber drove into a US embassy annex in Beirut. 16 people died, including the ambassador and his British counterpart. The long arm of terrorism has also reached into Saudi Arabia. 19 American nationals died and hundreds of people were injured at the military base at Dhahran in June.